Hello, everyone. I am here with Senator Stan Kutcher, and it is International Day to End Corporal Punishment 2023. I am also coming to this conversation from the Kwantlen Nation, otherwise known as Surrey, British Columbia. And this is a traditional and stolen land, I should also say. I believe in their truth. That corporal punishment has been used as a tool to assimilate Indigenous people in Canada and globally. And I also know my responsibility as a Canadian is to work to end violence and to reconcile. And in doing that, I co-founded No Violence for Kids Canada, which is a volunteer cooperative of many people actually that are working hard to urge the government of Canada to finally ban corporal punishment and answer call to action 6, which is to repeal section 43 of the criminal code. It has been on the floor up to 17 times now to ban corporal punishment in Canada over the past few decades. And we are now in a unique position. We have 2 bills on the floor that have been tabled. It seems like Canadians are ready to talk about this. So without further ado, I'll introduce a little bit here, Stan Kutcher, who has a very long bio. I'll try to keep it I'll try to keep
we don't need a bio. We don't need a bio.
I know.
People aren't interested in my bio. They want to hear what you have to say and what I have to say. So let's do that.
Okay, for sure. I just also want to let you know that Stan is from Halifax, and he was a psychiatrist, or still is, I guess. Still is a psychiatrist. Does that work like that?
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah. Does that all go? Okay. Professor Dalhousie has spent many, many years working in teen mental health. Actually, that's how I met you 10 years ago in a discussion in Vancouver for teenmentalhealth.org. So happy that our paths came back again. So welcome, Senator Kutcher. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me here. And one thing I noted, I was listening to your introduction, and I'm here on the unceded land of the Mi'kmaq peoples. And I'm looking out my window at the Atlantic Ocean, and I hear you're looking out your window at the Pacific Ocean. So this is truly a coast to coast. Now, we don't have the Arctic Ocean, but we're pretty good. Coast to coast is not bad.
Maybe next year we could get somebody from the Arctic. That's a goal. It's a goal. Let's not be here, though. Excellent. Yeah, I'm here right on the Pacific Ocean. And across Canada, this conversation is becoming quite a thing. This year, especially, I notice over the years, the uptick. It's an interesting Canada. So I thought today what we do, Stan, Senator Kutcher, is...
Stan is good.
Stan is good. Okay. Is we go through a bunch of questions. I have a list of questions for you. And I think these are common questions that have come up to me as I've been doing this advocacy work. And I thought what I'd do is just kind of shoot you the questions and we'll just go through that way and see how quickly we can get through them. How about that? Are you in for this game?
Let's try. Okay.
Let's do it. Okay. Here is the first question, Stan. What is corporal punishment?
Wow, that's people talk about it all the time, and there's a lot of confusion around that. So corporal punishment is the use of physical force to discipline a child so that they will be able to be better than they are. Okay, so it is using physical violence to try to help kids grow up healthy. And that doesn't make any sense. And corporal punishment means any kind of physical violence. It includes spanking, pinching, hitting, slapping. That's what corporal punishment is.
I could add for days, and good answer, Stan. We'll keep going. If anybody has any answers, anything else to say, you can join us in the comments. I can see the comments from YouTube. And yes, and just, I know the government of Canada, I just have to say this because one of the things that shocked me, the government of Canada website actually says slipping, I think it goes slapping, kicking, hitting, pinching a child may be considered an assault. So maybe, let's just.
Well, under the Criminal Code of Canada, unless you're a child, you would be considered to be assaulted if you received any of that kind of violence.
Next question, Stan.
All
Here
right.
we go. How many people say, oh, many people say they were hit and turned out fine. So why do we even need to repeal 43?
Yeah, I've heard that over and over and over and over again. And one of the questions I have for them or comments I make is just saying how good you would have been if you hadn't been hit. No, I'm just kidding around. But, this is the idea of a platoon of soldiers come up in front of a minefield, and one of them runs across the minefield and gets to the other side and says, look, I'm perfectly fine. You all walk across the minefield. The reality is that most of them will get blown up if they walk across that minefield. It's a logical fallacy. It's taking the characteristics of one person and applying them to a whole group of people. That is
Right.
complete illogical,
Good
and
point.
it is a classic logical fallacy. So, for example, I grew up at a time when we didn't wear seatbelts,
Right.
and I didn't get killed in a car accident. But everybody wears seatbelts now. Why? Because too many people did.
That's right.
So that argument just doesn't make any sense from any kind of logical perspective. The other thing is, turned out fine, is what I hear from people. Our wish is not that children turn out fine. Our wish is that every child has the opportunity to thrive, to grow into a healthy and compassionate and caring adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hear the argument, I turned out fine, it doesn't make any sense logically, and it doesn't make any sense for what we are trying to achieve as a country. So there we are. That's what I think about it.
Next question. The Supreme Court of Canada in 2004 already decided that corporal punishment does not violate kids' rights. Do you think the same outcome would come today?
Well, 2004, which was when that ruling was made, and it was, if I understand it correctly, it was on a constitutional issue. Well, we're not talking about a constitutional issue. We're talking about harm to children. It's a very different issue. So the point here is that, does corporal punishment cause harm to children? The Supreme Court wasn't specifically asked that to rule on that question, as far as I understand. The other thing is that since 2004, there has been a whack of research that has been published, some really good studies which have shown pretty clearly that corporal punishment, even in what some people say is mild forms, spanking is a mild form. It depends if you're the spanker or the spankee. And there's a whack of research that shows that type of corporal punishment actually has negative impacts, a whole host of negative impacts on children as they grow up. The other thing is that the Supreme Court ruling happened well before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It happened well before Canada was sensitized to the challenges and problems of the residential schools. And the repealing bill, Section 43 of their criminal code, is item number 6 in the TRC calls to action. And if any of the listeners are interested, you really should listen to Senator Jane McCallum's
Her speech
in the Senate.
Oh,
it's on my Senate website. You can go.
I'll make sure I put that in the description. I'll put, I think your website is, but I know your address is, but I'll check again.
That'd be great, because it just tells it like it is. And MJ went to residential schools, and she talks about her experience in residential school and being beaten and hit and slapped, and how different that was than her own family, how different that was from where she grew up.
Yeah, that it was a very moving speech this week.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's important to make that connection to the TRC call to action and why, this is such a relic, and how a repeal could bring justice to so many survivors, to families, to communities across Canada that are still really trying to tear apart, and come together. tear apart what's happened to them and unpack it, but more or less like bring their communities back together. The actual horror that's happened in Canada and globally because of violence, right? Marginalization, exploitation, all of it. Thank you, Stan, for bringing that up and making that connection to the Supreme Court decision as well. I think that's those are both very important conversations when we're looking at this repeal. The next question is one that I get a lot, and I'm super curious about your answer. Do parents have a right to decide how to discipline their own kids?
Well, that's a really, really important question, and I hear that a lot. Let me put it in a framework first. Children have rights. Parents have responsibilities. So when I like to reframe that and say, how can I as a parent discipline my children in a responsible manner? That when you ask that question, it's the answers are very, very different. Okay. So lawmakers, of which I am one now, have a responsibility to protect the human rights of children.
A duty.
So, yeah, a duty, a responsibility, duty, exactly. As we have responsibilities and duties to protect human rights for minorities and other groups, that's what we do as part of what our mandate is to help protect human rights. And so we need to know where the boundaries are. There are no such things as unfettered rights. Right. So I don't know of anything in the Declaration of Human Rights that says parents have a right to hit their children.
No.
It's not there, but children have a right not to be the recipients of violence.
And for dignity,
yeah. So the other thing that I would add here is that parents almost have a right to know what are the best ways that they can effectively discipline their children so that their children will have the best opportunity to grow and thrive. And there are all sorts of parenting programs which are now available, which have good results, positive parenting interventions, and ways to help parents that are culturally sensitive and quite appropriate. And none of those that I'm aware of that have really good evidence behind them say you should be hitting your children.
None. I work in that field.
There, you're the expert. Yes, I feel better. You're the expert. So here is our role as legislators can be seen as not only should we be protecting the child's rights, not to be harmed, not to receive violence, but we should also be doing everything we can to help parents become better parents, to provide the kind of programs necessary for them so that they can become better parents.
You're talking my language, Senator Kutcher, right? This bill really can initiate federal accountability to support parents across the nation and initiate programs instead of wait lists. And that's what I see happening all over the country is parents do want help. They are trying to break cycles. Breaking cycles is like trendy now in parenting. However, that adds more emotional load. How to break a cycle is in your skin and bones. And without the right support, it can create more guilt, more shame, more emotional trauma. Like the time is now. Parents want help. And we need the federal government to be accountable. Provincial wait lists are not working, right? Not working. So thank you for bringing that up. We need to repeal this bill right away. Parents under tons of stress and want help. All right, next. Oh, hold on. We have a couple comments just quickly. Elizabeth Perry, happy to be here. Thanks for doing this. Thank you, Elizabeth. We have mates place that page. Oh, what is the comment? I suggest that highlighting how clearly this affects BIPOC and disabled children more is very important. Thank you for that. Any comment on corporal punishment and BIPOC and children with different abilities? Senator Kutcher?
Well, we know that there are groups of children which are more likely to have violence directed at them by their parents and other groups. But the point that I want to make here is that every single child, regardless of what group you belong to, deserves not to be harmed and not to be hit. And in the rollout of parenting programs and parenting support, because you may need parenting support, those programs have to be culturally appropriate and tailored to meet the needs of specific populations, whether they be BIPOC populations or disabled kids or whatever. They need to be tailored to meet the needs of those populations. So I look at this, the floor is no violence against kids. The ceiling is up to the stratosphere. We can bring in all sorts of other things for different groups, different languages, different cultures. Absolutely. But the floor is the same for everybody.
I think that question was more related to I turned out fine. That makes sense. So I see that as the question being, I was spanked and I turned out fine, yet there's some people that might, because having corporal punishment does increase the likelihood of mental illness, psychological illnesses of all kinds, harm, you name it. It's connected and associated with all kinds of struggles and challenges around our behavior and well-being. That's a really good point. The next one is from ACES Canada. Happy to be here. Thanks for hosting this conversation. ACES Canada has been a great support throughout the last few years in this conversation. Super happy to have. Okay, let's look here and see what other questions do I have for Senator Kutcher. I know there's only a couple more. Will parents go to jail for spanking their kids, Senator Kutcher, if the repeal is passed?
You know what? This is one of those classic pieces of misinformation, or maybe even disinformation, because some opponents of the bill use this.
Right.
So this is classic disinformation, and other people spread it. So that's misinformation. And frankly, the answer is clearly no. We don't see that anywhere where the bill has this kind of legislation has passed in other countries. We don't see increases in parents going to jail. It's just it is one of those fear-mongering disinformation tactics that some critics of the bill, or some people who never want to change, they'd rather have a plow than a tractor. Because it was good for their father and their grandfather and their great-grandfather. Enough is enough. It just does. It's not true.
No, period. It's not. And I mean, after studying research after research in country after country, I think what shows is there's no change in actual criminal charges. And because of the social norm that changes, actually just no more charges against parents, but kids become safer. So it's just a win-win, right?
Can I just make one additional comment on that? I hear one of the classic misinformation components that I hear with this is the classic story. If a parent picks up their child and puts them into a car seat forcefully, they're going to get charged and they're going to go to jail. Complete and utter nonsense. Picking up your child and putting them forcefully into a car seat is your duty to protect.
Yeah.
It's not corporal punishment. Now, if you put your child in a car seat and click them in and then round up and whack them one, that's corporal punishment, but we don't want you to whack your kid after you've done your duty to protect. So whenever you hear people telling you things like, oh man, if you put your child or if you hold your child because they're running into traffic, or you run out into traffic and grab your child and put them on the sidewalk, you're going to go to jail. It's complete disinformation.
Absolutely. And it's so important to talk about that, because there's all kinds of defenses for your duty to protect as a parent. Your responsibility is to protect your children. So there's also, for the greater good, for the social good, you're not going to be charged for something that, is socially better for society. Hitting kids is not better.
You're so right. Look, on this issue, we recently had police officers from across the country come to talk about concerns they had around policing. So the group that came to talk to me, we asked them this specific question.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Would you, as a police officer, charge a parent because they put their car into a car seat or because they removed them physically from danger? And their response was, no, we wouldn't do that.
Never.
And so then we asked about teachers. Would you charge a teacher if the teacher held the student? No, we wouldn't do that because they were doing their duty to protect. They're trying to be helpful. But this is the kind of disinformation that people who oppose repeal of 43, Section 43, roll out over and over again.
Ugh. That's my face. If I could roll my eyes up back behind my head, that would be it. Another piece of this one is that when the repeal does come and that kind of disinformation, it really is the conversation we need to let go of, because the conversation needs to be what will happen, what positive things can come out of this repeal for parents, what opportunities can come out of this for parents. Parents are under stress. If we're hitting kids, you don't have a full toolbox. Right? That's what that tells us. So let's fill up those parenting toolbox with tons of options. Parents are the experts. When you have options in those moments, less likely you're going to resort to habits from the past, right? We're going to do better because that's what's in our guts and our hearts and our minds. So these conversations of, like you said, disinformation really are stalling what we can do to have better and healthier relationships with children and a more safe Canada, in my opinion. So blah, blah. It's such a question that's hard to answer right now, that one. But I like the disinformation. I'm going with that. Another comment from ACES. Thank you for distinguishing between the duty to protect and keep kids safe versus corporal punishment. This is so important for us to emphasize. Yes, absolutely, ACES Canada. Another one from Mate's Place, The Page, and very important conversation that I think is highly related. What about the use of seclusion and restraint in schools? It's one of the reasons I'm here, spent many years working in schools, and I know Stan as well. So can you make that connection, Stan?
You know, the issue, we've heard this over and over and over again. And if anybody knows better, it's schools. And there is absolutely no justification for restraint. I mean, you can restrain, but when people talk about restraint, they often talk about putting kids in a room, maybe tying them. No, one of our kids was tied to a chair. Talked about seeing kids in his school tied to a chair. You don't do that to children. Seclusion, you can't take a kid and pop them into a place. We used to do this kind of stuff in acute psychiatric wards where people were completely psychotic. None of that happens now because we figured out better ways to de-escalate. And teachers need support, but they also need to be trained in ways of de-escalating situations. And if an educator has to hold a person, to move them away from danger, that's perfectly fine. But I'm hearing stories, and I don't know enough about them, only what I read in the paper, about some pretty shocking things that have happened in schools, in the Yukon, and in some religious schools. I think there are court cases ongoing now. If anybody thinks that they can justify seclusion and restraint in the terms of what we are seeing in the Yukon and in some of the religious schools, court cases in Saskatchewan, you and I are not on the same page, frankly. And if you are justifying that, then you really are acting in a way that doesn't support the best interests of the child.
And I think you nailed it there too. I'd love to see more teachers on board with this action, because teachers do also work in very stressful environments. And the more stress you are, the more you might resort during conflict to violence. So teachers are at risk for using, violence in stressful environments. And everybody knows that school environments are highly stressful. So we do need to repeal this because it can help initiate programs to support teachers too. So that's a big conversation here. And I urge the Canadian Teachers Federation to step up and answer this call full repeal, no revision. That's what I say about that. So,
I think you just said a really important thing there, is that we respect and understand the teacher's workplace is very challenging.
Yeah.
And because there are problems in that workplace, frankly, there are not enough teachers. Frankly, there are not enough resources. Frankly, the school system is underfunded and undersupported. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be supportive of getting rid of violence against children. I mean, I'm there to help carry the torch for teachers.
Yeah.
I have worked in the school system for decades and see how challenging that job is and how important the role of a teacher is in the life of every single child. It's a hugely important role. And my goodness gracious, teachers need more resources. The system needs more resources. That's for sure. But to justify violence against children because there aren't enough resources, that doesn't work for me.
Me neither. Me neither. And it all comes down to the kids, right? Every environment where kids are learning really should be focusing on strength-based encouragement, skill development, positive involvement, all of the things that we know in research, responses, it really helps kids thrive. Stress environments are bad for kids. It's unhealthy for their brain. And so anywhere, parenting, teachers, any environments where there are children learning need real quality care on taking care of these brains and hearts of children. And it's really important to recognize and make that connection to this repeal and opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think teachers and teachers organizations can be at the forefront of this.
Absolutely, 100%.
Classrooms are different now than when I was in school, and I have ADHD and a learning disability, and I went through in rural schools with the seat of honor right next to the teacher's desk, where I could be reached by the attention gathering instrument of the time, which was a yardstick. And teachers don't do that anymore. Why? Because they have learned more effective ways, because schools are better resourced than they were when I was in a little rural school. We had three grades in the same classroom. So things are different. We change, and teachers can be the leaders in this change. And I'd really like to see teachers step up and be leaders in this change.
Me too. Me too. And let's add to that, even Senator Kutcher, I would love to see a Canada where teachers are actually teaching kids that it is their right to be safe, teaching kids about all of their rights, and that are able to have these really hard conversations with children and young people about how corporal punishment is wrong and harmful to them, so that they can children have spaces to talk about this amongst their peers and amongst people that care about them and want to keep them safe, and amongst people in their community that can do, right? So schools have this incredible opportunity to support families, but we have to break through the ice and have these kind of conversations. Teachers, we're calling on you, right? Let's get out there and make sure that we repeal this criminal code. Okay, the next quick question, Stan. Here we go. What will change after the repeal is passed, short-term, long-term, for teachers, social workers, parents, kids? What are your thoughts? What are your big thoughts about this?
Well, I'm just really aware of our time, but so I'll be fairly brief here. First of all, for kids, it'll provide a better environment. It's not the answer for everything, but it's part of this of providing a better environment so they can grow and thrive and have a better opportunity to be the best person that they can be when they grow up. And it also will, I think, impact the cycle of violence. We know from study after study that kids who are subject to violence as they're growing up as a way of solving conflict will use that violence to solve conflict later on, whether that's violence against their child, whether it's violence against another person, whether it's violence against their spouse. So if we want to deal with intimate partner violence, one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways we have to do this is protecting kids from being violent, because you practice what you learn. I think parents will have an opportunity to become better parents, and I'm a parent myself, a grandparent, and I know that the parents I talk to, they want to be better parents. We have these kids, and we want the kids to grow up and be as good as they can be, and we want to parent better. So this is I'm hopeful that this bill will actually force the federal government to put some money into parent support programs, parent education programs, support programs. I mean, the federal government already has a portal called Wellness Together, which is free to all Canadians. And on that Wellness Together portal, there is actually an intervention for parenting, to help
Moving
parents be
families.
better parents,
Yeah.
strongest families. It's
Strongest.
free, but most Canadians have absolutely no idea, they know anything about it. But there are all sorts of other parenting programs that could be put on that kind of portal.
Yeah.
And that could be given access to, and parents can be supported in this. And I think that this is a role of the federal government, because health promotion is part of what the federal government does. We have Public Health Agency of Canada. This is something that they can do. So we have the vehicles and we have the tools. We just have to have them put into place.
Yeah. It is 100% what you're saying. All of those things, the changes on society will impact everyone. Kids, parents, teachers, social workers, and we didn't touch on that today, but a big job of theirs is in protection, and having clear laws will also help them. Thank you so much, Senator Kutcher, for being here and answering these questions. These are some common questions that come up through this debate. And I urge everyone out there, actually, before we go, any final words, Stan, before I, let everybody know to write you and
Sure. Well, we need your support. One of the things that I have been so thrilled is that Canadians, whether they're as individuals or members of organizations, are coming forward and saying, look, this matters to us. And send us an email, voice your support in there. We can use all your voices. Go online, go onto social media, write op-eds in your local newspaper or whatever. That's the kind of support that when parliamentarians see that coming and they see that out there, they will pay more attention to that. The reality is that most Canadians want to help their children grow up to be the best kids that they can be. Some of them require more help than others. Some of them are less privileged. Absolutely. Let's provide that. We owe that to everybody in this country. So we need your voices telling all the parliamentarians that this is what you want to happen. So please do that.
Everybody, listen to that. Canada, this is our job in Canada, to step up and have these conversations. And now is the time. So please step up. Write Senator Kutcher. His email is right there, I think. And in the description, you can mailing address, no postage necessary. It doesn't have to be a long email. It can be short and sweet. I've been told. I think my letter was a little bit long. But please get out there. Spread the word. Go to No Violence for Kids Canada on Facebook. Share a photo, comment, whatever. We're working with algorithms out there over this bill. So it is really about us coming together in Canada and talking about how we can reduce violence, how we can keep kids more safe, how we can get more support for parents and teachers, and how we can finally make sure that our laws, legislations, policies, regulations, all of that are in the best interests of children. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Today is International Day to End Corporal Punishment. Get out there, make some noise however you can, and go hug your kids.
What a great way to end it. Or your grandkids.